We've all had those exhilarating moments where everything just kind of clicks.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like you're on top of the world, your vision is totally clear, and you feel, I don't know, invincible. It's that classic mountaintop experience.
Right.
But then, Monday morning rolls around,
Mm,
and you're staring at this sink full of dirty dishes, your inbox is completely overflowing, and you're just exhausted.
yeah, you're right back down at the bottom.
Exactly.
Feel
Right
that.
back at the bottom of the valley, feeling completely overwhelmed. It's just this universal whiplash, isn't it?
It really is. And, it's a whiplash that exposes something pretty fundamental about human nature.
How do you mean?
Well, we crave the mountaintop, obviously, but gravity always pulls us back down to the valley. And the tension between those two spaces, that transition from ultimate clarity to just absolute chaos, that's actually the focal point of the sources we're diving into today.
Right. And today's deep dive pulls from a really fascinating stack of material.
It does.
We're looking at some theological insights from a lecture by David Pawson alongside these really detailed study notes. One is called Formed in the Valley, and the other is Valley Training.
Yeah. And they explore a very specific and honestly a pretty brutal sequence of events in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 9, for those keeping track.
Right. And just to set the parameters for you listening right now, we aren't here to preach at you.
Definitely not.
Our mission today is just to act as your guides through these texts. We want to look closely at the mechanics of the arguments they're making.
Exactly. We're trying to extract some of the harsh, incredibly practical lessons about what it actually takes to survive and grow when you're stuck in that messy reality of the valley.
So, to set the scene, where are we starting?
Well, we need to understand the immediate context first. Jesus and his closest disciples have literally just come down from a physical mountain.
Right, the Transfiguration?
Yeah. They had this ultimate high-definition spiritual experience up there. But the moment their feet hit the dirt on the valley floor, all that clarity just evaporates.
They walk straight into a mess.
A total chaotic mess. You've got this desperate father, a boy possessed by an uncontrollable demon, these religious scholars arguing with everyone, and the rest of the disciples are just failing miserably to manage the situation.
Wow.
And the core thesis that emerges from all our sources today is basically this. You might meet God on the mountain, but your character is formed in the valley.
Formed in the valley. I like that. But looking at the disciples in this moment, it almost feels like this arrogance born of familiarity,
Oh, totally.
because they're at the bottom of the mountain. They are completely impotent, trying to cast out this demon and just falling flat on their faces.
Yeah.
But the thing is, just a few weeks prior, they had been sent out and successfully did this exact thing.
Right. They had a track record.
Exactly. So they clearly think they hold the patent on the power at this point. What do the sources actually say about that massive disconnect?
Well, the notes we're looking at, they pinpoint the issue with just surgical precision. They point out that the disciples had drifted from dependence to self-reliance.
Wow.
They basically assumed that past success guaranteed present power. In fact, there's this brilliant quote from the study materials. It says, "The greatest danger in ministry is yesterday's success."
The greatest danger is yesterday's success.
Wow. Yeah. They essentially just stopped asking for help. They forgot to rely on the actual source of their power, which the text identifies very clearly as prayer.
Okay, let's unpack this because it immediately makes me think of like a smartphone battery.
Okay, yeah.
You charge your phone up to 100% on Sunday and you think, great, I'm good to go.
Right.
But by Monday afternoon, if you haven't plugged it back in, the screen just goes black right when you need it the most.
Exactly.
The disciples thought they were running on 100% because of last week's victories, but they were actually entirely disconnected from the grid.
That maps perfectly onto an analogy that's used right in our source notes, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they describe a man who buys this high-end, top-of-the-line electric appliance. It has all the features, it looks incredibly impressive sitting on the counter, but it simply won't turn on.
Let me guess.
Yep. After complaining to the store, the technician points out the glaring problem. It was never plugged in.
Wow.
And the psychology here is just fascinating. I mean, human nature wants power to be an inherent trait, right? Like something we possess permanently once we earn it or achieve it once.
Yeah, we want to own it.
We don't like the vulnerability of having to continuously ask for it, but the text insists that without that private, persistent connection, there is zero output.
And what's interesting is this lack of power from the arrogant disciples, it's sharply contrasted by the boy's father,
It really is.
because his approach is entirely different. And honestly, it's a lot more relatable. He's exhausted, he's totally disillusioned. He comes to Jesus, and initially he says, if you can do anything, help us.
He's hedging his bets.
Totally hedging.
He is, and Jesus flips that hesitation right back on him. He essentially says, if I can, all things are possible for one who believes.
And then the father gives that famous response.
Right. The father's response is one of the most famously honest admissions in the entire text. He says, I believe. Help my unbelief.
I want to pause on that for a second, because the psychological relief of that statement is just massive.
Oh, yeah.
We live in a culture that absolutely demands certainty. You have to have the perfectly curated worldview, the unshakable confidence, zero imposter syndrome.
Yep.
But this father is standing there admitting his faith is just a fractured mess. But he's bringing that mess forward anyway.
And the Pawson lecture really emphasizes that true power starts exactly there, with sheer, unfiltered honesty.
Right.
You don't need a massive, unshakable faith. You just need to be honest with the big God.
Yeah.
And Pawson shares this incredible historical anecdote to illustrate what this kind of imperfect but directed faith actually looks like.
Oh, I love this story.
It's wild. There was an orphanage in Japan that desperately needed to expand, but there was a steep mountain blocking their only available building space.
Okay.
So the orphans read the verse in the Bible that says faith could move mountains. So they literally prayed for the mountain to be thrown into the sea.
Just casually praying away a mountain.
Right. And then they went away on a 2-week holiday, just continuing to pray about it.
Now, I'm assuming the mountain didn't just levitate and walk away on its own.
Well, not quite. But while they were gone, the local council decided they urgently needed to reclaim land from the sea to build a new warehouse foundation.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And they needed a massive amount of soil. So they brought in earth movers, flattened that exact mountain behind the orphanage, and dumped it into the ocean.
That is unbelievable.
When the kids returned, the mountain was just gone.
Wow.
And the underlying mechanic here, according to the sources, is that faith doesn't have to be perfect or completely free of doubt. It just has to be connected to the right source.
Right.
The disciples, they had zero doubt in themselves, but they were unplugged. The Father, he was full of doubt, but he plugged directly into the source.
So if I'm mapping this out chronologically from the sources, a failure of power usually stems from a failure of understanding, right?
Exactly.
Because the disciples didn't just randomly decide to unplug one day. They were actively resisting what they're being taught.
Yes.
The sources mention that Jesus was traveling incognito through Galilee at this point, and he was urgently trying to get a very specific concept through their heads.
Yeah, and this is where some heavy cognitive dissonance comes into play.
Right.
Jesus is deliberately avoiding the crowds because he has a very short window of time left. He is trying to teach his inner circle the central truth of his mission,
Which is?
that he is going to be betrayed, killed, and after 3 days rise again. But their mental model of a Messiah is, a conquering political hero, someone who is going to overthrow Rome and give them all cabinet positions in the new government.
So a suffering, dying Messiah literally does not compute for them.
Exactly, just bounces right off.
So they just filter it out.
Yeah,
It's like they have profound selective hearing.
very much so.
They're totally fascinated by the miracles, the healings, the idea of doing good and gaining this massive cultural influence. But they completely ignore the warnings about the cross.
Yeah, the notes actually compare this to a student who attends every single lecture, meticulously highlights all the minor side details in their textbook,
Right.
and then completely fails the final exam because they missed the central underlying concept of the entire course.
It's a fatal misunderstanding of the assignment.
Exactly.
But wait, let me push back on this a little bit because this raises an issue.
Yeah.
Isn't Christianity widely known globally today entirely for the doing good and helping people part?
Yes.
So why is Jesus so frustrated by that? Why is that a problem?
Well, the sources address this directly. Pawson's lecture argues that while doing good is absolutely a vital byproduct, it's not the core. The beating heart of the gospel is death and resurrection. It's about a radical sacrifice, not just moral self-improvement. The text argues that if you remove the cross, the entire foundation just crumbles.
You lose the engine.
Right. You're left with a nice philosophy, sure, but you have no actual mechanism to change human nature. The problem was the disciples wanted the glory of the miracles without the pain of the sacrifice.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
Oh, totally.
Because they are deliberately ignoring Jesus' message of sacrifice and death, their minds have to focus on something else. So they default to the exact opposite, ego and status.
Oh, yeah. The power politics start immediately.
Right. They're walking down the road toward Capernaum, and Jesus is out in front, and the disciples are lagging behind. And when they finally get indoors, Jesus turns around and asks them what they were discussing on the road.
And they meet his question with just dead silence,
Yeah.
because it's the silence of pure shame. What they were actually arguing about was who is the greatest.
Wow.
They were trying to establish a braided hierarchy, mentally divvying up the corner offices in this new kingdom they think is coming.
Unbelievable.
And Jesus delivers a rebuke that completely shatters their paradigm. He tells them, if anyone would be first, he must be last of all and servant of all.
Wow.
He basically takes the corporate ladder they're trying to climb and flips it completely upside down.
You know, this translates so perfectly to how we view networking today.
Oh, how so?
Well, every self-help book, every business seminar, they all tell you to network up.
Right.
You find the people who are richer, smarter, or more influential than you, get in their orbit, and leverage them to advance your career.
Yeah.
But Jesus is demanding the exact opposite here. He's telling them to network down.
Networking down. That is the perfect way to phrase it.
Yeah.
He is demanding they align themselves with the unseen people who offer absolutely zero return on investment.
Right.
And he proves this visually in the text. He pulls a little child right into the middle of the room and takes him in his arms.
And we have to remember the context of children back then, right?
Yeah. Exactly. We have to strip away our modern sentimental view of children here. In that ancient culture, a child wasn't the center of the household. They had zero status, zero rights, and zero economic value.
They were basically just a drain on resources until they could work.
Right. They were entirely overlooked. So Jesus is saying, if you want to be great, you welcome the people who cannot do a single thing to advance your social standing.
And the tragic irony is that this lesson clearly doesn't stick with them.
Not at all.
Because it heavily foreshadows what happens later at the Last Supper, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. The study notes point out the sheer awkwardness of that later gathering.
Oh, man.
They arrive for the Last Supper, and there's a bowl of water and a towel sitting at the door, but there's no servant to wash their feet.
Which was huge back then.
Yeah, it was the basic, necessary hospitality of the day, given how dusty the roads were.
Right.
And because they are still so obsessed with this hierarchy, none of the disciples want to take the lowest, most menial role. They are terrified of losing status in front of each other.
So they just ignore it.
Yep, they all just sit down with filthy feet, stubbornly waiting out the clock, hoping someone else will crack and do it.
Wow.
And ultimately, Jesus himself has to take off his outer garments and wash their feet, proving again that true greatness in his kingdom requires doing the work literally no one else wants to do.
And an obsession with status like that, it breeds intense territorialism.
Oh, absolutely.
Because once you feel like you have a high rank, you start desperately protecting your turf. And this plays out almost immediately when John proudly marches up to Jesus to report a supposed victory.
Right, John comes to him and says, "Teacher, we saw a man casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he is not following us."
Wow.
The psychology of tribalism is just dripping from that sentence. Notice the phrasing. He doesn't say he's not following you, Jesus. He says he's not following us.
It's all about the brand.
Exactly. John's identity has become wrapped up in his VIP access, not the actual mission.
Right, it's like, he doesn't have our uniform, he doesn't have our specific badge, so he can't possibly be doing the work.
And Jesus immediately shuts that tribalism down. He tells them, do not stop him. Whoever is not against us is for us. He even says that someone just giving a cup of water in his name counts.
Wow.
The study notes clarify this using a really great modern example: the mechanics of disaster relief.
Right, yeah.
When a massive hurricane hits, you have all these different organizations showing up, right? They have different uniforms, different colored trucks, different organizational structures.
Red Cross, FEMA, local churches.
Exactly. But they are all on the exact same team trying to save lives. You don't tackle another rescue worker and tell them to stop pulling people from the rubble just because they don't draw a paycheck from your specific agency.
That makes total sense. And the lecture from David Pawson highlights how this exact tension plays out historically, too, especially when established religious structures clash with genuine enthusiasm.
Right.
He tells the story about being a Royal Air Force chaplain stationed in Aden, and he gets this urgent, panicked message from his superiors to go investigate some rogue, unauthorized religious activity happening at a base out in the Persian Gulf.
Yeah, he flies out there fully expecting to have to shut down some bizarre cult.
Right.
But instead, he finds this unsupervised young airman leading a massive, genuine spiritual revival, like literally baptizing guys in the military base's swimming pool.
Oh, wow. In the pool.
Yeah. And Pawson, recognizing the life-saving work that's actually happening, realizes he can't stop it just because it doesn't fit the official military church program.
So what does he do?
He ends up joining in. He preaches to them for 3.5 hours.
That's incredible.
He also brings up William Booth in the lecture, the founder of the Salvation Army.
Okay.
Booth was a Methodist minister, but the hierarchy wanted him to fit neatly into their established, predictable administrative system. They didn't like his methods. And during a meeting where they were trying to force him into this bureaucratic straitjacket, his wife, Catherine, actually yelled from the gallery, "Never!"
Wow. Good for her.
Right. And from that refusal to be boxed in by tribalism, the Salvation Army was born.
Here is where the contrast really jumps out at me, though.
Okay.
Because earlier, Jesus was incredibly uncompromising about the specific reality of his death and resurrection, right?
Yes.
He demands absolute allegiance from his disciples on that core truth. But here, he's telling them to be incredibly wide and generous about an outsider using his name.
Right.
Why the stark difference? Why so strict on internal discipline, but so broad with external tolerance?
Well, that difference gets to the absolute core of human hypocrisy.
Okay, unpack that.
The sources highlight the psychological reason behind this. Human nature is naturally inclined to be incredibly strict, judgmental, and intolerant of others who don't do things our way.
Sure.
But at the same time, we are endlessly slack, forgiving, and indulgent with ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
It is a defense mechanism for our ego. Judging someone else's uniform is a cheap, easy way to feel righteous without having to actually do any difficult internal work.
Oh, that stings.
Yeah.
Because we externalize the problem so we don't have to look in the mirror?
Precisely. And Jesus demands the exact reverse of human nature. He says, be wide and generous in accepting others who are doing the work, but be absolutely ruthless with your own internal compromises.
Wow.
Which honestly transitions us into some of the most intense graphic language in the entire text.
Right, the cut it off passage.
Yeah. Jesus says, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. If your foot causes you to sin, cut it off. If your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out.
Okay, we definitely need to handle that carefully. Because on its face, reading that just cold, it sounds terrifying.
It does.
But the sources are clear that we are dealing with intense metaphor here to prove a point about urgency, correct?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. The Pawson lecture explicitly clarifies that this is picture language. It's not an instruction for literal self-mutilation. As Pawson points out logically, if you pluck out your right eye because it looks at something it shouldn't, well, your left eye is still perfectly capable of looking at the exact same thing.
The physical removal doesn't solve the actual heart issue.
Exactly. Jesus is using shocking language to demand decisive, radical action against whatever toxic habits are pulling you down.
The study notes use a really good analogy here, a medical diagnosis.
Yeah.
If a doctor finds a malignant tumor, you don't negotiate with it.
No.
You don't say, well, let's just manage this gently and see if it behaves. You undergo radical surgery to cut it out immediately because your life is literally on the line.
Right. Or think of a leaking boat.
Okay.
A small leak seems harmless, maybe even manageable at first, right? But if you ignore it, the slow accumulation of water will eventually drag the entire vessel straight to the bottom.
And Jesus grounds this warning in a very real, visceral, historical image to really drive those psychological stakes home.
He does.
He talks about hell, but he uses the specific word Gehenna. And to the people listening right then and there, Gehenna wasn't just some abstract theological concept. It was a literal physical geography.
Right. It was a place you could walk to.
Exactly. It was a deep, dark, shadowy valley just outside the walls of Jerusalem where all the city's rubbish was dumped.
Yeah.
It was a place of rotting garbage, maggots, which is actually what Jesus references when he says where their worm does not die, and constantly smoldering fires that they use to keep the trash reduced.
So to his audience, he's painting the ultimate picture of a life that has just become waste.
Yeah.
It represents a life that has lost its utility. It's just thrown on the rubbish heap. The psychological argument Jesus is making here is profound. He's saying it is far better to go through life feeling deprived, feeling the pain of missing a hand or an eye because you forcefully cut a toxic habit or a destructive relationship out of your life than to hold on to it for comfort and let it drag your entire character into the dump. And he caps this all off with a metaphor about salt. He says, salt is good, but if the salt has lost its saltiness, how will you make it salty again?
Which is such an interesting biological puzzle.
It is.
Because chemically speaking, sodium chloride can't stop being sodium chloride. It doesn't just evaporate into a different compound.
Right. Chemically it can't. But historically, Pawson explains the reality of the ancient marketplace.
Oh, how so?
Well, sharp, dishonest grocers back then would take pure salt and intentionally mix it with white sand.
Ah, to bulk it up.
Exactly. The sand made the bags heavier so they could sell them for a higher profit. But when a customer bought it and tried to use it to flavor food or fertilize a field or disinfect a dung heap, which were its primary uses in the ancient world, it was completely useless.
Because the sand had utterly diluted its power.
Yes, it wouldn't dissolve. It was good for nothing except being thrown out into the street to be walked on.
You know, if we synthesize that historically specific detail into our modern lives,
Yeah.
the sand and the salt, it represents the minor everyday compromises we make.
Oh, that's good.
We let bad habits or toxic environments or small ethical shortcuts just mix into our daily routines.
Right.
And we think we can blend our core values with a little bit of this sand just to make life easier or more profitable.
Yeah, we think we can manage it.
But the psychological reality is that it slowly dulls our effectiveness. It dilutes us until we lose our distinct flavor entirely, and we become useless for the purpose we were actually meant for.
And that brings us perfectly full circle to the overarching theme of this entire deep dive.
It does.
The Valley training notes end with a really beautiful analogy about a master sculptor.
Okay.
Someone asks the sculptor how he manages to create such a breathtaking masterpiece out of a raw, messy block of marble. And the sculptor replies, I simply chip away everything that doesn't belong. And that is the exact mechanism of the Valley in Mark chapter 9. Jesus is acting as the sculptor. Down in the mess and the chaos of the valley, he is aggressively chipping away the disciples' self-reliance, their ignorance, their desperate need for status, their narrow tribalism, and their tolerance for those minor compromises.
All to reveal the true character underneath.
Exactly, to reveal the true, enduring character.
That is just a powerful framework for looking at our own struggles.
Yeah.
And as we wrap up, I want to take these historical and theological concepts and bring them right to your doorstep.
Yeah.
The reflection notes we use for this deep dive ask 3 very penetrating questions, and I really want you to ask yourself these today as you navigate your own valley.
They're a tough question.
They are. First, where in your life are you currently unplugged and trying to run on the fumes of yesterday's success instead of asking for fresh help? Second, who is the child in your life right now? Like, who is that unseen, uninfluential person you need to serve with absolutely no expectation of getting a return on your investment? And third, what specific cancer or sand are you quietly tolerating in your life that needs to be radically cut off today, not tomorrow?
Those are heavy questions, but they are the exact questions the pressure of the valley forces us to answer if we actually want to grow.
They really are. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you go about your day. We spend so much of our lives desperately trying to climb back up to the mountaintop.
We do.
We chase those highs, those fleeting moments of perfect clarity, and we view the messy, exhausting, endless valley as just an annoying obstacle blocking our path.
Yeah, something to just get through.
Right. But what if we have the geography of our own growth completely backwards? What if the mountaintops are actually just the temporary rest stops and the messy, chaotic, frustrating valley is the only place where the real work of becoming who we're meant to be actually happens? Keep diving deep, and we'll catch you next time.